just onside. I hope you're all well. It's absolutely freezing. We're expecting a couple of days of snow, apparently in the northwest. So I'm not looking forward to that at all. OS, you've got a couple of days of snow, but then you've got. I was checking the temperature in Dubai for the next 2 weeks. It's bright and sunny. Absolutely cloudless skies, about 27, 28. So you're gonna have a couple of days of coldness, but then you're gonna go into the warm. But apart from that, how are you, my friend?
Not too bad. I mean, you check the next couple of weeks, it's the same as the weeks after that as well, to be fair. So,
And it
and the
just gets
two
warmer and warmer.
it gets warmer and warmer, which will be an interesting adjustment. Yeah, I went for a walk earlier actually with my nephew, and I did have to take a couple of minutes to find my snood and a few other things, but it was incredibly chilly. I'm just about regaining the sensation in my toes. So yeah, no, a couple of days, but hopefully all should be well. Doing well, thank you. Doing good. A couple of big games over this weekend, so really kind of keen to start discussing.
Yeah, massive, massive games. But before we talk about those massive games, let me ask, as always, smash a like, share with your friends, do all the good stuff. Okay. So before we carry on, please hit that like button right now. It will be greatly appreciated. Okay. Talking about massive games, it was an excellent game on Saturday. I mean, it's a truncated program, but there's been plenty of excitement over the weekend. The first game, Newcastle, Man City, KDB. The man is back, or is he back? What impact will he have? I mean, it was a cracking game. Talk about the game, and especially KDB. What difference will he now make to Manchester City?
Yeah, I mean, he had quite the desired effect, didn't he, when he came on? And it's everything that you think about with Kevin De Bruyne, the absolute class in terms of the nonchalance with which he took his kind of equalizing goal. I mean, there's not many who are going to try that side foot from just outside the box, nutmegging the defender into the bottom corner, and then obviously quite an inspirational assist. I mean, what I would say is with that assist, and I'll get onto it, is that I mean he's more than capable. I don't really see that as anything special, and that's simply because of his high standards. Because when you give a player of that quality time and space from that angle, with the ability to go kind of left, right, center, he'll more times than not find his target, and simply that's because of the greatness of the player. So I actually thought the finish was a little bit more kind of incredible, let's say, than the assist itself. But yeah, look, Kevin De Bruyne, this was the point, wasn't it? About Man City's returning players. They seem to turn it on in the second half of the season. They're obviously playing without Haaland at the moment. Um, and this was the narrative that City will come on strong because of these players, because of the way they kind of, I wouldn't call it time their form, but they get running, don't they, when it comes to those kind of crunch Champions League last 16 quarter semis, Premier League big games, head to heads, and they've been tried and tested and come through multiple times. The game itself was a cracker, wasn't it, Ayub? It promised much, it delivered much. I thought Newcastle absolutely played their part, especially in the first half. I thought, and again, lots of great goals. Bernardo Silva, what a finish! But even this Newcastle goals, both incredibly well taken, both incredible finishes. So actually, top class goals all around, top all five goals. What I would say is, I think where I give Man City huge credit is, and I don't know if you felt the same thing when watching, and this is. Again, this is to the credit of the coach, credit to those players. When they were 2-1 down in the second half, and you thought, it felt as though they could get a goal, just wondered whether they'd have enough time to get two. The way City create opportunities when they start moving the ball around quickly is a sight to behold, really is.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is I've seen many a team, and my team included, often look in the most when you need it most, which clearly it was on Saturday. You can imagine what Liverpool were thinking when Newcastle were 2-1 up. This was an opportunity to forge a 5 point lead with the same games played against Man City, and Liverpool are probably thinking, look, we'll give them a draw, and that still puts us very much in the box seat, you would argue, which would have been a huge fillip for Liverpool. But I think the way City poured it on and the manner in which they were going about creating those opportunities, they really penned Newcastle in. And I really admired that about their play. I mean, their commitment to moving the ball quickly, sharply. Yes, they've got a plethora of talent, but again, you've still got to go out there and put it together. De Bruyne comes on, everything starts happening. First touch, quickly moving it around the sides. He's playing with a certain command of his own game right now, in terms of his maturity at this stage of his career, where you think everything's coming off. He's trying the ridiculous stuff. You'll have seen, but he came on straight away, third man runs, cutbacks, causing all sorts of havoc. And then in addition to that, you've got an informed forward, and you've got various different players causing all sorts of problems. I thought Rodri had an incredible game as well. So that was the most, I would say, endearing and most impressive aspect of City. Not the fact that they turned it around. They've turned around many games. It's the fact that when they press that switch, it's not just knocking it around sideways, causing the team no real issues. They actually get consistently in behind the midfield, in behind the defense, causing all sorts of havoc. And often that's the pressure that tells the famous United teams, in a sense of the kind of that kind of 2 decade plus when Fergie was in charge. It's just the sheer volume and consistency and the pressure that would often tell. It's not normally a quality goal that breaks the dam. Let's say it's normally just that overall pressure that tells. So I thought it was an incredible game. And just one final comment on the final goal. I mean, it's the dying minutes. If you remember, I think it was 3 or 5 minutes that were added on. I'll have to check. I think maybe it was five. 5 minutes that were added on. I think it was 3 minutes in the United game, but 5 minutes that were added on. And I think just when you want composure, a youngster off the bench, you don't really expect that. Yes, he's playing for Man City, which means that he's there on merit if you're breaking through that squad and that team. But the manner in which he took his goal, I think there's a couple of things with it. I think if you look carefully, Trippier, I think, worried about Oscar Bob's kind of pace, let's say, he ends up a little deeper than his back line, which means that if he actually just kept his line, Oscar Bob would have been just offside. But the fact is, I think he's just worried about the threat in behind, let's say. But even Bob, to his credit, he slightly just hesitates in between his run. If you watch it carefully, he doesn't just go. He goes, but just slows down to keep himself on, give himself the right angle to receive the ball. And then the first touch, second touch. I mean, these are honestly, given the pressure, given the moment, given that probably maybe it's the naivety or the innocence of being young, perhaps, that you don't know those kind of pressurized moments. But it felt like a big moment. I mean, when that ball was being floated over, it still didn't look as threatening a situation because there's so many things that can happen. Trippier can intercept the ball. Trippier might end up tackling him. Yes, he could have ended up fouling him as well. Or the goal, or it's a heavy first touch. The goalkeeper comes out and grabs the ball. The goalkeeper can make a save on the second touch. It's just everything was so classy from there on in. Amazing first touch to kill it. The 2 foot finish, the way he kind of took it around the goalkeeper in terms of the way he did it to create the angle. I mean, incredible finish, incredible poise from the young lad. I think City deserved it in the end, to be fair, on merit because of that second half performance. But again, just their ability in games when they turn the volume up is just, they create so many opportunities. They look the most threatening when they have to have it, let's say. And I think that was the most impressive aspect. So I think many people think it's inevitable that City will turn this around because they've done it time and time again. But I thought the beauty on Saturday, at least for me, was the fact that it looked inevitable because of the fact that they are so well honed, let's say, in creating opportunities. So incredible win. Tough on Newcastle, maybe, but I think just because of that sheer weight and volume of pressure in the second half, I thought City just edged it, to be fair.
You covered all the points. And the key point, though, is, and you touched upon it, the way that they moved the ball, it was unbelievable. And it was a monumental moment. I think it's a season-defining game that you could tell by the reactions of the Man City players and Guardiola post-match that it was such an important victory. And it showed what City are all about. That's really what I took from that game, because at 2-1, I was looking at the table and I just thought that maybe if City can hang on, or if Newcastle can hang on, it's going to be a 2-game swing in terms of what Liverpool have. But the movement, there were times where I was getting dizzy with the City players. They were just moving so quickly, so efficiently. And that was the thing. They don't just move, they move into real nice pockets of space. And that's sometimes I looked at when KDB scored his goal, and he was in Premier League terms, he was in acres of space. but that's just because of the movement. I think this is just an unbelievable demonstration of. I often criticize Guardiola, but I will always give him credit for, he's a wonderful coach of great players, great players. And that's what was demonstrated. I don't think there's any other coach who would have been able to the movement that he is able to get from the players, because to find space in the Premier League, there is tremendous art. You have to be really well coached to be able to move at the right time, and it's all synchronized as well. That's the thing. It's not just one player moving. It's just so many moving parts that really, as a defender, as a midfielder, you're you're confused. You've got your man. There's another man who move, and that's the beauty of this Manchester City side. I think with KDB, he is just he's the finishing piece. It's this jigsaw, and I just looked at that performance. And I'm thinking, my goodness me, it's going to be hard now. I think they are now capable of going on a not just an unbeaten run, on a winning run. I think what I saw on Saturday was the team that's going to win the league. I want Liverpool to win the league, but I think I saw the team that's going to win the league.
Yeah, look, time will tell, and they are, as again, I think they are the bookies' favourites as it stands. I mean, Jurgen Klopp had the famous line, didn't he, last week when he joked that De Bruyne is warming up, the whole country is starting to shake. And I think it was quite a poignant comment, given he left his imprint and in kind of a 23-minute cameo on Saturday night. Look, I don't disagree with you. The only thing I would caution is the fact that right now they are needing every last bit of that offensive output because they do look vulnerable at the back. 23 goals conceded. Liverpool have the best defense in the league. Yes, you might think Liverpool still concede a few chances here and there, but ultimately 18 goals conceded at the 20-game mark, 5 better than Man City. And Man City do look vulnerable. Yes, Newcastle, I thought, were smart in that first half in terms of their ability to break the offside trap. Obviously, just offside for the situation that caused the Edison injury, but they were smart in terms of how they were going about it. And I think when you do have pace on the wing, like you do with Gordon and Almiron and what have you, you can threaten. They do look vulnerable at you right now. So what I would say is, as much as I agree, they are the most aesthetically pleasing offensive team because of everything that you mentioned, that synchronized movement, their ability to find space when other teams would play the safer option. Again, I compare it to how Arsenal are trying to navigate going up against low block teams, and they are nowhere near the mature outfit that Man City are in terms of that ability to create consistent opportunities when you face 2 blocks of 4, 2 blocks of 5. So I think there's a lot to admire there. The only thing I would say is I think it's one game of football, and they needed a last minute winner to pull it out. I still think there are some signs there that they're going to have to improve in a lot of different areas. Conceding twice again, it's not the City we know of old because they do pride themselves on shutouts as well. I still think this is going all the way till the very end. I still think Liverpool will be there right till the very end. Time will tell whether Arsenal can get themselves back in it. There's other teams perhaps in the mix as well. Is that the team that's going to win the title? Most people think so. But I don't think you can just simply just write it off because the games have to be played, the games have to be won. So yes, they've done it before, but I think also City have to prove it that they can do it again this season as well. And right now they've got a 2 point deficit. They won't worry about that. Plenty of time. But I, I, I'd still wait and see how this develops.
I mean, there is a glimmer of hope in terms of there is a weakness at the back because Newcastle could have. I mean, I think Isaac had an opportunity, but it's one of those where the opposition will have to be clinical. And that's the problem. If you're not clinical, this team, I mean, I think you're almost got to score 3 goals to get a point against Man City. That's the way that it's looked now. That yes, they will give you opportunities, but you have to take those opportunities. Now, how many teams are going to take those opportunities? Now, Newcastle took 2, but it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. So I was hugely impressed with this Manchester City performance, and it was just it wasn't just the sheer weight of pressure, but I think it was calculated. It was clever. It was smart. It was a coach who obviously has got great ideas, and it was implemented by very, very good players. And I think that's what impressed me because, as I said, I'm quite happy to acknowledge that I do criticize Guardiola, but when it comes to having great players at his disposal, this is what he can do, and what he demonstrated was absolutely fantastic. And as I said, the movement was just breathtaking. I mean, I want to watch the game again because it was just at one stage, it was just players popping up everywhere, moving, and it must have been. I don't think there was any team in the world that perhaps could have defended for the last 15 minutes the way that City were attacking, because it was just unbelievable. It really was. And I use the word synchronized for a reason, because that's the thing. It's you can have players moving, but they've got to be moving into the right position to be able to find little pockets of space. But then when they find those pockets of space, they can be dangerous.
Yeah.
So it was absolutely fantastic. And I think City celebrated to a certain extent after the game, but there was a reason for that celebration, because I think it looked as if it was a team that was absolutely aligned to a point where this is a team now that you can think, it's going to be tough to beat this Man City side.
Yeah, and look, you don't normally say this about serial winners, but honestly, I liked what I saw from City at the end in terms of. I mean, I know you're not being critically just observing it, but I loved the celebration. That's what last minute goals should be like. You know,
Mm,
there should be moments of euphoria. You saw a fist pumping by Guardiola. He was abide himself on the
mm,
bench. The bench was emptying. They were all kind of jumping
mm,
around one another. You saw De Bruyne's reaction at the full time whistle in terms of kind of gesturing to the Man City fans and the faithful up in the heavens there at St James's Park. It's good to see that, because ultimately this is a team that's achieved pretty much everything. So the fact is, they're right in there. Guardiola spoke about it afterwards, that they showed me that they want to retain this title. Yes, I
mm.
mean, some of that's just kind of euphoric talk, let's say, after a big win. But I love to see that. I love to watch teams, irrespective of whether they are rivals or what have you, goals such as those are emotional moments, right?
Mm.
Especially in the kind of dying minutes of the game. So that was kind of fantastic to see in some regards. And honestly, it was an incredibly well taken goal by the youngster. So
Mm.
huge respect. I'd off my cap to him. And City go on again. Word of caution: games have to be played. I don't think it's just inevitable that they're going to run away with it, as many seem to think. But yeah, let's see how it pans out.
I hope that is the case. Obviously, as a
I
as
can
a
see
as
you're
a
not as confident in your pick.
well, yeah. I mean, I must confess, having backed Liverpool, that I mean the celebrations. I looked at it from the point of view that it wasn't just a celebration. Yes, it was the fact that they've scored a late winner, coming from 2-1 behind. Obviously, it's always a a thing to celebrate. But I think it was the wider context as well. KDB's back. I think it sent a message as well to the rest of the league, or at least those teams at the top, that City are very much in the race for the title again. So
For sure.
excellent game, really enjoyable, and a real great advert for the Premier League. Another game that's a fantastic advert for the Premier League was yesterday, the Tottenham Man United game, or the Man United versus Tottenham game. Again, thoroughly entertaining. My take was it was maybe I sort of gave Spurs. They edged it by in the end by quite a margin, but obviously it was a 2-2 result. So what was your take on that game?
Well, firstly, I thought you're right. It was a wonderful game of football, as often the Spurs against United games are, right. This one obviously at Old Trafford. Yeah, incredible game, great games to watch. Love the fact that the weekend, although we didn't have a full schedule, was punctuated by some great games. I thought Spurs. I agree with you. I think I concur. They did edge it. I'm not sure what I feel about in terms of what the result, whether it's a fair one. Maybe it was. I thought Spurs were the better team, and that comes down to them perhaps just having a bit more conviction in their way of playing and philosophy. I still think there were some elements with Spurs as well where I thought they could have been a little bit more I don't think clinical, but a bit more, slightly more conviction, and I'll come on to that shortly. But look, at the end, they were behind twice, and they managed to kind of pull it back twice. I thought there were some great performances on the Spurs side. I think Richarlison's started to settle. He's having some great games. I thought his link up, his harassing, winning the ball back for his team was really, really good to see. The great thing about Spurs is we know they are arguably. Uh, Arguably the most exciting team to watch in terms of the way they play their football, especially when they've got all their players. Remember, they are missing some crucial players right now. Uh, Son, Madison,
Mm,
Kulusevski, they obviously play and what have you. I just thought, given what they've got out, the fact that they've got Bentancur, who I
mm,
really do think is an underrated player. Obviously, they missed him for the vast majority of last season. He's an incredible player, I think. Could be one of the best central midfielders in the league. I genuinely feel that strongly about him. Just needs the kind of platform to show that, to showcase that. I think under Postecoglou, that could well come to the fore because they are a team that wants to play. And I think what you're seeing now is, and we've discussed Postecoglou a fair bit. We'll come on to the United side of the ledger shortly, but what I do like from Postecoglou is, in a sense, in games like these where you know United will let you play, you saw Rashford cheating on that side, allowing Porro to get forward. Yes, Rashford had his moments as well. But I do like that against certain teams where you know there's a vulnerability there. Spurs' strategy, let's say, or way of playing actually, in my opinion, kind of suits them because there's always going to be spaces. Against United, there's always spaces to play through them. And I thought Spurs showed a good deal of conviction, played a middle three. The only thing I was a little bit disappointed is at times they had the ability to, when Richarlison received the ball, to kind of turn around and run at the defenders, but he'd keep popping it back to keep it nice and tidy and sharp. Whereas actually he wasn't actually getting pressed at all, if that makes sense. So I think there's some maturity there needed to identify moments of danger that you can actually go at the other opposite ends. Again, also from the winger areas, I thought Werner had a good debut, but still that final product there is missing,
mm,
which was obviously his number one issue when he was playing for Chelsea. Brennan Johnson, I thought, had a poor game in terms of, again, that final product. Richarlison, I thought, was great. I think when you look at the team they had out there yesterday, played a wonderful brand of football. They still move it really quickly, which I like. Udogie, I thought, had a fantastic game. Their ability to play quick makes them very exciting to watch. And then when you think, wow, infuse Madison, Son,
mm,
Kulusevski into that team and others, and no doubt they've strengthened in January as well. Gary Neville was waxing lyrical about them afterwards, saying they could finish above Arsenal, Liverpool. Listen, I don't think it's a worse shout because I just watch
mm,
you watch football with the eye test, and Spurs have definitely got something. And if they could just shore it up at the back, and some of those reinforcements will help, I think they definitely could come on strong in the second half of the season. I would definitely would not rule them out for pushing for the title as well if they can get some of those players back. From a United side, just very quickly, yeah, I mean, look, they needed a win, didn't they? They are a little bit behind in the race. For fourth spot, let's say, or I say fourth spot. Ultimately, I guess they could get further ahead. Spurs and Arsenal are now level, although Spurs have played a game extra. But I thought still the same old issues. Yes, they could have won it at the death, should have won it at the death, probably with
mm.
that chance from McTominay. If he gets that back, I think he probably he'd want to have that back, get it on target. But I just think there's still the same old vulnerabilities. Yes, they've got the ability. Yes, they've got the players that can score some goals, but it's still too easy to play against. Teams are creating way too many opportunities. It's too open at times, especially at Old Trafford. I thought there was a bit of a nervousness at times when Spurs were dominant in that first half. So yeah, I think look more of the same. I think from United, I've seen them play this type of game before. What's the like Garnacho? Yeah, he's been a real plus this season, as has McTominay, but there's still a few too many issues. I don't think the change of ownership is just going to change that overnight. Yes, he requires time. The manager perhaps needs more time, but it's been a bit of a so-so season. They're still far off the pace in terms of their objectives for this season. Um, yeah, I thought Spurs, if they had a bit more conviction, probably could have come away with 3 points.
I agree. I think they'll be bitterly disappointed. Spurs. They were the better side, and I think they were quite by a distance the better side. I mean, in terms of the way that they played, it was chalk and cheese. I think United. It was occasionally they might have had a decent move, but it was sort of you could see it was a lot more sluggish. When Spurs had the ball, it was sharp, it was quick, they pressed well, and they were the much better side as well. And it also, I was also looking at that and just thinking that uh, if I was a United supporter I'd be looking at what happens if you recruit well. That's what Spurs have done. They've recruited well in comparison to Manchester United, who I think they've recruited quite poorly. Because I mean, I'm not exactly sure what the spend levels are of both clubs, but certainly every player that Spurs have brought in is a good quality player. There are some players who are going to develop. Johnson, I still think he's in his infancy in the Premier League, and he's going to get better and better. But I mean, you talked about him, Udogie. He was magnificent. That is a beast of a player. 6'2", strong. He's great at defending. And we talked about Garnacho, who's been one of the standout players for Manchester United. Udogie had him in his pocket. He hardly had a sniff. And this is where I think I'm impressed by Spurs, that there's a lot of players who are missing, key players, big players. Add them to the mix. And I genuinely think in terms of potential candidates for the Premier League, maybe this season, perhaps not, but certainly going forward, this will be a team that will be serious contenders to Manchester City.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about Spurs in terms of the recruitment side of things, especially this season, right? Madison's been a really nice fit for them. Son's re-energized. You're wondering how they would cope after Harry Kane left, and to be fair, they've done really well on the whole. I think now where you have to give the manager immense credit, and this is what I mean about when we speak about give the manager time or give him more transfer windows or let him get his players, it's a nonsense. Ultimately, if you're a good manager, a club is never as bad when the times are really bad, let's say, and they're not as good maybe perhaps when the times are good. There's normally often in between. That's where coaching matters. And I think what you're seeing with Postecoglou is he's taking some of those players, and even though they're missing critical players where you think there's going to be a drop off now in terms of the offensive out or just the general team cohesion. And yet yesterday, in terms of the general build-up play, I thought was pretty good, to be honest with you. The middle three were moving the ball. What I like about them most is they move the ball quickly. I love that about teams. I mean, you have to move the ball quickly. One touch, two touch. They sometimes, even when it goes down the back, they are loath to go back, but they often move it around quickly around the striker. So it's like whether it's Romero playing it to Van de Ven, but it's quick. It's not like laboured. It's not just rolling it to him. They know that their best chance in achieving results lies in playing with a certain intensity with the way the ball has to move. And I think when you compare that with United, what I saw a lot of, and what I've seen a lot of in games, is that they are relying on this kind of direct play from Fernandes, launching it down the line to Garnacho, launching it crossfield to Rashford. And there's good things that come off the back of that, Ayub. But what it's doing is that it's creating a slightly more open game, because what happens is the wingers then get the ball, try and create something. Let's say they get snuffed out. They're then out of the game, and then the other team starts pouring it on and running up the other end. So it creates this kind of more kind of you play, we play, you attack, we attack game. And I think in that scenario, United are not good enough to withstand kind of the pressure, so to speak. I mean, you saw Newcastle defending in numbers against Man City, yet Man City, because to your point, they are so well honed, they can just create opportunities because they know where to be, even in kind of really clustered and kind of filled up penalty boxes. Whereas with United, I just think right now they are gambling a little too much in this kind of direct play with Fernandes. Is all too quick to play it down the line for Garnacho. And yes, they are speed merchants and they can do good things. But I just wonder, I just think it's not enabling United to control games, let's say. And I think they are, again, all too easy to play against. Yes, the first goal came from a set piece, but I just think you need a base to play off. And right now, Manchester United are just too easy to play against, simply put. And Spurs were the better team, as many teams have been at Old Trafford this season. I would argue actually more teams probably at Old Trafford have been better than, let's say, the home team has. In terms of Spurs being able to challenge for title, you're right. I think this season might be a little too far, perhaps. But I think if they're in with a shout, Ayub, maybe within 5 points with maybe 7, 8 games to go. If they've got all their players fit, they're a team that can score plenty. I think they've, what was the statistic? I think they've now scored in like 30 odd
Yeah,
continuous
yeah,
games
yeah.
since March 2023. Somewhere to go to reach Arsenal. I think we're in the 50s. But yeah, it shows that they are likely to score goals. So I think if they can keep it a little bit tight at the back, and I think more and more games together will help that, it's clearly a team on the up. It's clearly a team that the fans are loving watching. And that's not always been the case. Yes, Spurs historically have always kind of played well and scored goals, but they've not really achieved much. I think this
Mm.
team, just promises much. And he spoke about Udogie just very quickly. I mean, you're right. He did have a very good defensive game. I think his ball carrying's very good. I love that about him in terms of his running on the ball, off the ball. Although he did have this one kind of confused moment where he headed the ball against the post. Where
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
I was thinking,
yeah,
what's he doing, man? What's he doing? But he didn't deserve that. He had a fantastic game. You're absolutely right.
yeah, yeah. And it's the recruitment. I mean, I'm not sure how much they paid, but that's the type of recruitment that really you expect from big clubs, where they look at the players. I mean, they've obviously done their due diligence because he's energetic, he's combative, he's physical, but he's no shortage of skill, and he is a player that I think any club would benefit from. And this is really where I'm always critical of Manchester United's recruitment policy. I'm not sure what they look at. It's like with Anthony, I'm forever criticizing Anthony. I think he was 70, 80 million. And as yet, I don't think I've seen anything from Anthony which shows me he's worth 20 million, let alone 80 million.
But the question I have to you is that just simply a player thing, or given that we've seen that time and time again at Manchester United, is that those players are not being put in a system or a clear philosophy to then succeed? So what I mean is, just very quickly, yes, it's up to the player ultimately to play well. You're absolutely right. Let's not, I'm not coming off that. Ultimately, players have to play well. But there are some players who go into teams and then fit in seamlessly and contribute because either the ideas are communicated clearly or there's a certain clear directive about the way they're going to play. Like Ange Postecoglou, it tells you in interviews, post-match conferences, pre-match conferences that there's a certain way we're going to play. We play quick. We play quick. There's that famous soundbite from pre-season, I think it was, when they passed it back to the goalkeeper and he's absolutely giving a verbal volley to the centre back saying, "Don't go back. We play forward. We play forward." Now that's gonna get him in trouble, but damn sure is excited to watch. I just wonder whether or not is it because United still right now you're not sure how they're going to play, and if we're thinking that as outside observers, maybe players are also struggling a little bit with what's expected of them, how they are supposed to play, how they're going about trying to break down teams. What are your thoughts?
I'm. It's a good question. It's a really good question. I mean, I don't know how much due diligence coaches do, but it almost looks as if the characters of the players that Spurs have bought, there is a certain quality that they have that it almost that element is ticked that these are good characters. Whereas with United, I don't know whether it's at the moment I'm not sure. I mean, I'd love to hear from United fans as to what their thoughts are, but it just seems that every player that Spurs have bought, there seems to be a certain characteristic that they have that it almost feels that if at any team that they would play well because that's the nature. Whereas United, these players may have got a good reputation, but I don't know. It's like with Anthony. I mean, that's the player that I've mentioned before, and I'll mention him again. He just feels that I don't know whether he would, if he was at Spurs, would he be a different player? Maybe you're right. Maybe it's the coaching. I'm not sure. It just sort of feels that there are two clubs that seem to be so far apart in terms of the recruitment, in terms of how the coaches are implementing the ideas. I mean, at the moment, Ange he's working absolutely brilliantly. He seems to be a coach that players have a great deal of respect. He seems to be quite clear in his mind as to how he wants his teams to play. He's able to obviously implement his ideas very clearly because there's a lot of new players at Spurs that they've bought into the idea. I mean, we're talking about the manager for Man United. How long has he been at the club now? He's been there longer than Ange, but it seems to be almost going backwards. So I'm not sure whether it's the coach, whether it's the players, whether it's a combination of both. But certainly what I see at Spurs is excellent recruitment and a coach who's able to implement these ideas very, very quickly. So he obviously must have an ability to be clear, to be concise, and impart his ideas very easily. Whereas obviously Ten Hag seems to be struggling at the moment.
Yeah, honestly, you make a they are good points. If you think about comparing the two clubs, I mean, you could argue that Ange Postecoglou has definitely had more to deal with. I mean, his best player leaves, an absolute club legend. He then, like you said, makes certain recruitment decisions. There's so many new players or players that were there that were not contributing much at all in terms of actual first team action or in terms of substantial minutes and being a significant part of that first team squad. And he's got them all playing to a certain standard where that's consistent across the board. Now, look, Ange's had his questions posed of him in terms of having different ways of playing when certain situations merit and what have you. And I think, look, he's smart enough to adapt that as and when. I think what he's perhaps thinking right now is season one, year one of quote unquote the project. He's probably thinking, I just need everyone buying into how we're going to play. And then perhaps once that maturity comes, there will be times where we can slightly tweak and we've got more talent and more options, let's say, off the bench to really keep playing the way they are consistently. I think, look, they are playing a really nice brand of football. They're a really fun team to watch. I really
Mm,
enjoy watching how they're going about trying to break teams down. I think with a few more, again, I think with a few more pressured games together, let's say, or pressurized games together, I think they can achieve a lot. I think with some, and with more and more, let's say, I say success, hopefully the board will back them because they'll see, oh, hang on, we are going places. And that's what I mean. In a very short space of time, Spurs are playing clearly a different brand of football than they were last year, and B, it's clear that there's some building blocks there. Whereas with United, it's really the same old that we're seeing. They're still
mm,
too open, still too easy to play against, still probably relying on moments of brilliance. That's not to say, again, yesterday they could have won the game. I don't think they were
mm,
massively inferior. I thought, again, Spurs were just a better team. But, and yeah, that Rashford goal was a thing of beauty. But I just think still there's not enough consistent ideas on the pitch where you say, all right, I can see how we're trying to go about this, or we're in control at the moment. It always feels as though they are vulnerable at any part of the game, if that makes sense,
mm.
because the other team could put one or two nice little passes together in quick order and get in behind. So look, Spurs will be happy enough with the point. I think United will they're too far behind, and I think the disappointing thing for them this season, are you? If you look at it right now, if Liverpool win their game in hand, I'm just having a quick look, but if Liverpool win their game in hand, that's 16-point gap to their nearest rivals or their geographical rivals in terms of Liverpool. Yes, City are their historical rivals, but that's 16 points to Liverpool, probably 17 if you count the inferior goal difference, because that's a
Mm,
huge swing there. And Liverpool are a team that finished behind them last season.
mm.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it just goes to show that when you've got a common thread, and Jurgen Klopp's class, we know that, but there is that opportunity to get through with one or two key additions to get back into the big time. United, unfortunately, have consistently fell short. We'll wait and see whether or not he gets to start next season again. Show the new
Yeah.
owners evaluating things, but I thought it was a disappointing general performance from them yesterday, in my opinion.
It was, and but they, as they've done many times this season, they could have mugged Spurs with McTominay, which I thought was it. It he must be disappointed because he's somebody that does pop up with goals, and I don't think that was that difficult a chance to get it on target. So it will be bitterly disappointed, but entertaining game. Especially
Absolutely.
if you're a neutral. So that's our roundup on the games, or the games that at least mattered. There's some breaking news, and with your legal background, I'd be interested to sort of find out what the situation is. Everton and Forest, there's some charges brought against them. Quickly outline what the charges are and what the potential consequences could be. Bearing in mind Everton already had, I think, 10 points deducted. So, what's your thoughts on what's breaking at the moment?
Yeah, I mean the news actually broke yesterday, didn't it? That Everton and Forest were most likely going to be charged with breaches of the profit and sustainability rules of the Premier League. I think now these are not things that take clubs by surprise. By the way, Everton and the Premier League have been working together for quite a few years since they've fallen foul, let's say, of the kind of spending rules or kind of accepted losses, let's say. And Forest, we know the challenges that they've had. There's some arguments that Forest are making to say, look, we spent 1 year in the kind of championship. The Brennan Johnson sale was kind of factored in after the 3 year rolling period. So there's various kind of legalese and legal points to kind of consider. I think both teams actually accept that they have fallen foul of the rules. So that's even just these particular ones that they've been charged with. I think time will tell whether A, there's any points deduction, B, if there's any points deduction this season, because it's critical, isn't it, Ayub? I mean, both these teams are right in amongst it. Yes, Everton have done really well to dig themselves a little bit out. Obviously, drew at home to Aston Villa this weekend, but another points deduction, depending on what that is, if it goes through this year, could be very interesting, right? And it will really give some hope to the teams below them. Forest, another team we discussed, you and George were discussing. I think they were both your picks to kind of fall in amongst that kind of relegation battle. So it'll be interesting to see what points deduction they have. But this is now, I think this is also the larger picture in mind, which is that I think really reinforcing that message about clubs being really diligent about making sure they adhere to the rules. In my opinion, Arsenal are considering spending some money in January, but I think they're quite tight, let's say, with the FFP rules or the profit and sustainability rules. Let's wait and see. I think this is a developing story, only just broke, I think, an hour or so ago. But Everton, if you're an Everton fan, you must be thinking it never rains, but it pours, because
Yeah.
this is a lot of adversity in one season to take, and even then they might still survive. So give them credit.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, just before we sort of finish, I was speaking to Stuart Jones, our resident Everton supporter in the
Yes.
office, and he was absolutely going berserk, and it was the customary default setting. What about City? They they obviously have different rules applying to City, so it is going to be an interesting story as it develops, and I am actually intrigued to find out what the penalties are going to be, because it could get extremely ugly if they do enforce a penalty this season. Uh, I think Everton, I don't know. Everton, I still think will probably survive, even if you take 10 points away. I think Forest will be doomed, but it is going to be an interesting few weeks. I mean, I'm not sure when the outcome will be made public, but it is going to be quite an interesting story.
Just very quickly, Ayub, do you want to talk about your team on a bit of
Oh
a
yes, of course.
on a bit of a run, spearheaded by your
Paddy
top?
Bamford. Uh,
Absolutely.
just in
Talk to
case the viewers are still sort of tuned in, they're probably gone by now. But anyway, yeah, excellent result at Cardiff. It was a very poor Cardiff, but sometimes you've always got to give credit to the team that's playing. And I thought it was a really professional performance. Paddy Bamford, and this is what sometimes he does. He goes on these little runs. He doesn't score for years, and then suddenly he scores in 5 consecutive games. But uh, he did miss a few as well, which he perhaps should have been a little bit more clinical. But that's our third consecutive 3-0 victory. So we're doing all right. We're doing all right. But Southampton won, Ipswich won. Leicester, even though they lost, they're too far ahead for any of us to really catch them. So that's all we can do. Carry on winning. We've got a big game against Preston, my hometown team, on I think it's Saturday or Sunday. I think it's a midday kickoff, so that's going to be an extremely important game. But really, to be honest, I'm waiting for Southampton to slip up. They don't seem to be slipping up at all. In fact, they're getting stronger and stronger. Ipswich, not too sure, but again, they won, so it's getting tight.
Well,
In the
Ipswich needed,
championship.
yeah, Ipswich needed that win, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
I mean, after 4 games, they lost and 3 draws the games prior to that. I mean, you're only 7 points behind them with an actual positive goal difference compared to Ipswich. So I wouldn't rule it out. You're right, Southampton are on an incredible run of results, but you've put a little bit of daylight between yourselves and seventh, which I still think pragmatic old me is the first step. I think there afterwards you can keep pushing and push on. Leicester, yes, they lost, I think, at the weekend, if memory serves, but
Yeah.
they've got plenty in the
It's done
bank.
and dusted. It's
Yeah.
done and dusted. Leicester, they're up. It's that second spot where, at the moment, there's probably 3 teams eyeing that position. I still put down Southampton as the favourites, because they're a machine at this moment in time. Because not only are they just playing well, they're just winning, and they're winning comfortably. So, but all we can do is just keep on winning, and let's see where that takes us at the end of the season.
I just know how the season's going to end if Southampton do finish third. I mean, look, Ipswich, Let's see. I mean, Southampton probably would usurp Ipswich on current form. There's too many games for Ipswich to hold out. But I can just imagine if Southampton did finish third, you'll be hoping if you finish fourth that some team takes them out, because I don't think you're very confident about playing
No, in the
Southampton in a playoff final.
No, if we're not second, I want Southampton to be second. Honestly, I daren't have Southampton in the playoffs if we're in the playoffs, but that's a good few months away, so we can worry about that when the time arrives. Right. On that note, it's time to say goodbye, but it's a farewell for you as well. Even though the show continues, this is the last time that we'll be recording, or at least OS will be recording in the UK. He will be in sunnier climes on the next episode. So I'm absolutely sure that the viewers probably will sort of echo my sentiments, but we wish you a safe journey to Dubai. Obviously, all the success in Dubai as well. And we'll sort of, I'm not sure exactly when we'll record the next one, because obviously OS is traveling over to Dubai, so he's got a few things that he needs to do once he's there. But hopefully, with a bit of luck, we could probably shoot on Friday. I'll be here in the UK. You'll be in Dubai, so hopefully we can align the timings, and then we could shoot on there. But all the very best.
Thank you.
Safe travels and all that kind of stuff. So I look forward to speaking to you very, very soon.
Thank you very much, Ayub. Yes, sunnier climes indeed. Next one. Hopefully, we should be able to record on Friday. You're right. We'll see how it all pans out in terms of the timing of the recordings and the frequency. But yeah, let's see. I mean, Arsenal got a big game on Saturday, and if they start winning whilst I'm there, I'll be thinking, right, I'm not leaving. No matter what happens, I'm just not leaving. So let's see. It often happens like that, but yeah, no, good. Thank you very much for the kind words.
Right, and on that note, viewers, take care. It's going to be a little bit crazy over the next 2 days, especially if you're in the northwest of England. So stay safe, stay warm, and until the next time, see you later.